Hello gamers from around the world, this is Archimedes, the video game enthusiast from Germany, with a summary video on a couple of Xbox exclusive games that have been officially previewed in the last couple of days. It's totally normal that news are light right before some big shows like E3 or the Summer Game Fest, but over the last days a couple of Xbox exclusive games got official previews and it looks like that those games could be true sleeper hits. And I'm talking of course about the Ascent, which got previewed by a lot of media sites and influencers. I'm also talking about Psychonauts II, which has an exclusive cover story at Game Informer. But more importantly, Tim Schafer, head of Double Fine and the mastermind behind the game, has been on Major Nelson's podcast, revealing a lot of super interesting informations about the game. And it totally makes sense that those games get a dedicated preview before E3, because usually in the big showcase those kind of smaller games usually get overlooked. And that's why I want to focus in this video on what we learned about the Ascent and what the overall impression for that game was. I will also talk about Psychonauts 2 and show some new footage that has been revealed during the Major Nelson podcast and summarize all the infos that we've got. And if time allows it, we will also talk about a couple of other Xbox exclusive sleeper hits that I think we will hear more about really soon. But before we go through all of that, I want to ask you for a favor. If you watched this video and end up enjoying yourself, then please consider to hit the like and subscribe button and maybe even turn on the notification bell to not miss out on future content. This doesn't cost you anything, but it helps my channel more than you think, and I would greatly appreciate your support. Okay, but now let's talk about the games. As always, you can find the link to all the sources I used in this video in the description down below. I want to start with the Ascent. It looks kinda like a Diablo meets Cyberpunk game. The Ascent is an action RPG that is played from an isometric perspective, and it'll launch in the Xbox ecosystem on July 29th. Of course, day one in Gamepass. The game is developed by Neon Giant, a small studio that was founded in 2018 and its headquarters is located in Sweden. The studio was founded by some veterans out of the gaming industry. They've previously worked on games like Doom and Wolfenstein, Gears of War or Far Cry 3. The studio, and with that the core team for developing the Ascent, has only a size of 11 developers, and this highly talented team has lifted the curtain on their game over the last days and allowed a lot of media people and influencers to get a remote hands-on on the game. So you can find a lot of previews out there, but I want to start here with the preview by Jess Corden from Windows Central. And the footage you can see here is from the newly released trailer. What definitely stands out with the game are the graphics. Usually in those smaller kind of games we don't get graphics that look like they had a AAA budget. But not just the preview on Windows Central confirmed that the game looks absolutely gorgeous, but every other preview I have read mentions this in the first sentence: this game looks absolutely amazing. We can see from the trailer that there is a ton of detail in the world, that we have some dynamic lighting, not just with the environments but also with the light coming from weapons and explosions. We can see that smoke and other debris has volumetric effects and that there is of course volumetric lighting. In addition to that, we can also see, and the previews have confirmed this, there's a lot of destruction going on, and I've said that many times in previous videos that I hope that developers use the new CPU power in the next gen consoles not only for frame rates but also for better AI and or physics simulation and better interaction with the environments. And it kind of looks like this is the first try of a small studio to touch on that. Okay, but let's focus on the game. In the Ascent you play a merc who lives on the planet Veles, which is a colony run by the Ascent group, hence the name of the game. You start out as a simple character that is not blessed with superpowers or anything. In a typical RPG manner, it is up to you to level up your character. The world in the Ascent has been described as a living world with a lot of inhabitants and a lot of stuff going on, which is great to hear that it's not just pure action but that there are actual hub areas that provide you the feeling of a rich world. In the preview from WCC Tech, which by the way I'm also using as a source here, it has been confirmed that the story in the game is indeed linear, so no player choices when it comes to story. The choices you have to make are related to your character and playstyle. It is a full-fledged action RPG that lets you decide how you want to play and how you want to level your character. I quote here now directly from Jess Corden: "With a wide variety of stats and progression, tons of weapons and abilities and equipment you can loot and craft. You can create your own character and design your stat weights around your playstyle as you see fit." So that's really good to hear that you can basically manage your character, weapons and abilities the way you want. And that is necessary, cause the game is not easy. It's a tough game, but not an unfair one. And it's always good to hear that, because nothing is more frustrating than an unfair game. By the way, there are no difficulty settings in the game, but if you choose to play the game in co-op, which by the way you can do at all times, the difficulty scales with the amount of players joining you. And with that, by the way, also the stats of your rewards and loot. The co-op in the game works as a drop-in drop-out co-op. So if you join your buddy's game, you can take all the loot and progression you made with you when you come back to your own game. Okay, so taking all that into account, the Ascent really sounds and looks absolutely amazing, and I think this is a true sleeper hit and one of the highlights of the Xbox exclusive games this year. What we still have yet to learn about the game is how the end game works, but I bet that we will learn that when we get closer to launch. So make sure to let me know in the comments down below if you are excited about the Ascent, and we are moving over to the next game that got previewed over the last days, and that is Psychonauts 2. The game is developed by Double Fine. That studio was acquired by Microsoft in 2019 to join the Xbox first-party studios, and it looks like Psychonauts 2 is going to be one of the first, if not the first, Xbox first-party game released on the Xbox Series consoles. Game Informer has the exclusive rights to cover that game as their cover story this month, so if you want to learn more about the game, definitely keep an eye out to Game Informer over the next weeks. But besides the Game Informer cover story, the head of Double Fine Studios, Tim Schafer, was a guest in Major Nelson's podcast, and here we learned a lot of cool things about the game. By the way, I'm showing footage here from the Major Nelson podcast as well as the Game Informer trailer. Okay, since the first Psychonauts launched in 2005, some of you might not be really familiar with what Psychonauts actually is. Of course, you can play the first game right now on your Xbox via Gamepass, or we could just listen to Tim Schafer, who explained what the game and gameplay actually is.
What we talked a little bit of the gameplay, but there's a lot of different style of gameplays in this game, right?
Yeah, there's a platforming where Raz is a trained acrobat, so he has a lot of skills of climbing poles and swinging on poles, and a lot of the deep platforming mechanics. But also, it's an adventure game, so there's puzzles, there's dialogue with characters, like in some of the old LucasArts adventure games, dialogue trees, and then there's combat and action in it too.
So there you have it. The game combines a lot of different elements, and that is what Double Fine games are known for. For instance, if you remember Brutal Legends, that game was in its first half a third-person action adventure, and suddenly it turned into a strategy game for a good while. And those kind of gameplay surprises is what I definitely expect for Psychonauts 2 as well. Double Fine games have always mixed up their gameplay, and every level will feel different to play. At the podcast there was also Ben Reeves, who works at Game Informer and is covering the game all month long, and he has played the game and basically confirms this.
I started to jump in, but that was the coolest thing about the original game was every level was different. One level you're a kaiju knocking down cities, and one you're exploring some crazy suburban area. And the one thing that I really took away during my time talking to you guys is you really wanted to bring that back. And, every level has its own theme. Every level has unique gameplay stuff, which I'm sure is just a pain to make. But for a player, for a fan, that's exciting because every I don't know what to expect, from 1 minute to the next.
Yeah, we do really try to make every level have its own art style and a gameplay twist, something different than all the other levels. And it's part of the reason it takes so long to make these games, but I think it's really important. It's part of the big appeal. You never know what's going to happen. It's set inside the human mind, a lot of it. So we could do anything we want this way. It's so creatively inspiring to make a game like this and fun to play.
So as you can hear, we can expect a lot of variety in the game, and also Tim Schafer himself confirmed that, and as he said, this is one of the reasons why the game took actually so long to make, because of the variety. But what does that mean for the narrative in the game? Let's hear from the man himself.
So it's also like each level is its own game, right?
It feels that way for sure, and and definitely its own look and its own, it's a narrative game, so there's a lot of meaning to the story and with the characters. They hopefully really pull you in, and you feel like these characters are real to you, and you get really involved in their emotional state and stuff, which is not really like a typical platforming thing, but it's there as deep as you want to get into it. You don't have to really totally psychoanalyze all the characters, but we try and put a lot of thought into making all of that solid and fun to explore if you're into that.
Okay, Psychonauts 2 is not only going to be a platformer/puzzle/adventure/action game, but it also puts a certain focus on the narrative. Now, all that sounds really interesting, and I can't wait to learn more about the game over the next weeks, and I bet that we will get a release date for the game at E3, and it's probably going to be a surprise announcement like the game is out now. Psychonauts 2 has been in development for a long time, and last Christmas Tim Schafer spoke about the studio working on the credits of the game, and that this should tell us how far along long they are in development. So my guess here is that over the last 5 to 6 months they have been polishing up the game and that it's more or less ready to release really soon. Okay, but with that I want to move on. I've said it before that the year 2021 will be a year where indie games like the Ascent or AA games like Psychonauts 2 will be able to shine. The pandemic is still going on and a lot of the bigger AAA games have already been moved to the year 2022, and I bet we haven't seen all the delays yet. And that's why these sleeper hits are so important to look at. For instance, the Xbox ecosystem exclusive Stalker 2 is also scheduled for this year. That game is going to be an open world RPG/shooter. Think Metro goes open world. That game is going to be a true next-gen exclusive because it will support high fidelity 4K visuals with HDR support, ray tracing and high frame rates. Recently they have shown a render engine demo for characters and weapons, and that game is going to be a visual showcase that we will hopefully see at E3 in action. Another example for a possible sleeper hit is the Xbox ecosystem exclusive Song of Iron, a 2.5D side-scrolling brawler with a Viking setting. Now I had the chance to play a very early build of that game and you can find my preview on my channel, and it reminded me of a mix in between Inside combined with some awesome Viking action. This is definitely a game everyone should pay attention to. But with that I want to wrap it up for this video. There are a ton of amazing smaller to mid-sized games coming this year. Make sure to let me know in the comments down below which games you are actually looking forward to the most. I wanted to use this video to highlight those two potential sleeper hits, the Ascent and Psychonauts 2. I'm glad that they got a proper spotlight right before E3 to really showcase those amazing looking games, because in the middle of June we will get a lot of announcements for the bigger games that we are all excited for, but we should also keep an eye out for games like the Ascent that got developed by our core team of 11 people and looks like it can easily compete with a AAA game. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did so, please do not forget to hit the like and subscribe button as well as the notification bell on the way out, and consider sharing this out to other gamers. I would greatly appreciate it. And let me know in the comments down below, what do you think about the Ascent and Psychonauts 2? What other AA or indie game are you looking forward to the most? And besides here on YouTube, you can also hit me up on Twitter, where I share a lot of opinions and gaming discussions. But for now, thank you very much for watching, I see you the next time, and game on!